And that's always very encouraging for a new platform like ours to have people come on and, come back and continue to engage. What we try to do at the Power Panel is really engage in conversation that are not getting the kind of mainstream attention that people would like. Hence, very outrageous. I'm sorry, you need to mute yourself, please. As soon as you come in, please mute yourself. It's interrupting the conversation here. So to get back to what I was saying, today we're going to be talking about, of course, China, the crouching dragon, post the COVID-19 crisis. In recent memory, at least, we've seen China behave with a certain swagger on the international global platform. And post-COVID, the response to China in its handling of the pandemic, in its communication of the pandemic, the timeline, the WHO's role. I think most of us are familiar with all of these issues. We'll, of course, dive into them with greater detail. I'm really privileged to be joined today by two China experts. There is Professor Madhav Nalapat, who is UNESCO Peace Chair, Editorial Director of NewsX, and also Manipal University, teaches at Manipal University. I think he's Peace Chair over there, and travels extensively to China, Taiwan, the US, Washington, DC, and is very familiar with the geopolitical makeup. In fact, has written a book also, or more than one book on geopolitics. So it's a real privilege to have you with us, Professor. And we also have Dr. Nayan from the Manohar Parrikar, renamed Manohar Parrikar ITSA Institute, which you are all familiar with. Again, China expert, special focus on WMD, on national security, on geopolitics, and a keen watcher of what's going on in our neighborhood and around the world, and what security challenges are going to kind of emerge from this COVID situation. And also keen China watcher, which is what the focus of our discussion is going to be today. Like with all Power Panels, my role is really that of a facilitator of conversation. I am not so much as somebody who will keep interrupting, so that's how we're different again. I would like to facilitate a conversation between two people who really know the subject well and bring in a question every once in a while. So let's get started. Thank you everyone for being here. Once again, please mute your mics and your videos. Should you wish to ask a question, please enter that in the Zoom group chat. You can message everyone or me personally. And I will make sure that during the course of the conversation, we can get to as many of those questions as we can. We're going out live in a couple of places as well, so we'll be taking in questions from there as well. And now getting back to our main conversation here, Professor Nalapat, I was, reading yesterday on the Aussies or the Australians getting very angry at China, and they're usually very pleasant and friendly. So it's not a characteristic reaction from them, but their Prime Minister in Canberra was very firm. He said that he backed an investigation into Chinese handling of the pandemic and was actually looking forward to an investigation and was very, very open and direct about it. The Chinese, of course, responded very unpleasantly, almost North Korean-esque in their response. They said the Australians are like gum stuck on the Chinese soul. And by soul, I don't mean S-O-U-L or anything Taoist, but S-O-L-E. Very rude response. So how are you reading this current fiery exchange, which is as recent as maybe 16 hours ago?
You know, the Chinese leadership, the standing committee, the general secretary, they don't have a system of elections where millions of people have got to turn out and choose a particular candidate or a particular political party. It's an entirely different system. Now, today, in democracies across the world, there is an upwelling of feeling against China. There's a lot of talk about how the virus originated in China and how it spread from China. There's also some talk about the Chinese waiting too long to basically inform the rest of the world about the virulence of the virus. So there's a tremendous amount of anti-China feeling across the world in many populations. You can see that in Australia. You can see that in the United States. You can see that even in places like Canada, which are not normally prone to very extreme kind of reactions on countries. So the same thing is happening in Europe as well. So it's only natural that politicians who need to face elections every now and then, including the Prime Minister of Australia, will have to ensure that he's seen by his constituency as being very strong on China and not basically being what is called a panda hugger. That is basically somebody who gives China a lot of breaks and who's basically taking a policy which is very friendly to China and basically very supportive of what Chinese want. Now, the same thing in the United States. One of the main talking points about with Donald Trump has got is that Joe Biden is a puppet of the Chinese. Hillary Clinton called Donald Trump a puppet of the Russians. Now, Donald Trump is turning the tables on Hillary Clinton's chosen candidate, Joe Biden, by saying, well, you're a puppet of the Chinese. And he's pointing to Hunter Biden's activities there and multiple other, instances, including Bill Clinton supporting China in WTO, and Barack Obama talking about a G2, the US and China, the two of us, we can set the world right and things like that. So Donald Trump is out to prove that he is the anti-China person. And then what happens is that, information comes out in the media, which is more or less supportive of Joe Biden. I don't think much of the media likes Trump. That some company in which Trump has got a share has taken a huge loan from some Chinese bank. Now, so this back and forth is going across the world. And every democratic leader has got to show to his or her voting base that, look, I'm tough on China. So I would say the Australian Prime Minister's words are part of this essential necessity of any democratic leader not to allow public opinion to drown you, but to actually go forward with the tide of public opinion.
So you say that it's more political posturing than any real intent. That's what I'm gleaning from your comments right now.
Look, otherwise, I'd like to say very clearly that there's a big difference between China today and China, let's say, when Deng Xiaoping started his modernization of China, or even China in 2012, when Xi Jinping took over as the General Secretary. There's a big difference in that. And the Chinese have basically, they have not, what they have said about Australia, they have not talked about some other virus originating from Australia. They did that in the United States. They have talked about $130 billion of Chinese purchases from Australia and told the Australians, all right, you don't like us? Why should we buy $130 billion of goods from you? And how many millions of Australians are going to be out of a job if we stop buying that? So this is what the Chinese reaction is.
Yes. And the Australians have then responded and said that this kind of economic coercion is not really going to intimidate us. So they're not letting up either.
Well, look, I'm sorry, but, as an analyst, I look not at talk, but at action. I read a lot of statements. I sometimes access a lot of statements, or whether it's on television, I get clips of that, whether it's statements, I go by practical action. So yes, we have had some very tough statements from Australia. These are verbal, these are written. And if they're there in practice, then it's a different matter. But I haven't seen that third step yet.
Okay. Dr. Nayan, your comments, your initial comments.
No, I agree with Professor Nalapat. In fact, very interestingly and surprisingly, possibly because, most likely because Australia is not facing the kind of problem United States and European countries are facing. So it just took the cudgel on behalf of the Western power. The Western power, which was dominating, and all are basically the entire world, as Professor Nalapat rightly pointed out, is basically irritated by the Chinese behavior, the way it manipulated the international organizations like World Health Organizations, the way it suppressed information promised in many of the treaties and regimes it's part of, and it has been trying to project itself as a very important and very responsible actor of the international system. And the way it has been trying to behave and trying to just showcase its soft power after the crisis, it's really annoying to everyone. And quite surprisingly, again, even in the Western world, there are people who are in a hurry to write off United States, the Western countries, and other countries, and saying very Fukuyama to Kissinger, of course, is an old China hand, so we should not be surprised. But yeah, all are saying that the world order is going to be reset. They are going to see the disorder and the emergence of China. So all these talks are basically eluding the reality, the problem in which the world has been pushed in. And I think the Australian reaction is basically the frustration or anger towards China that what you have done and what you are still doing. So I think it in that way. I see it in that way. And you can see in recent months, in recent years rather, Australia, as you said, it is a very soft kind of country, but it has been becoming party to the group, or you can say the countries which is ready to take on China. Quad is one important group which has emerged in Pacific, Asia Pacific, you can say, but in the Pacific area.
A little louder, Doctor.
I'm saying that, yeah, in recent years, you have seen a different Australia. It is really ready to work with the world. It is ready to work with those countries which are ready to take on China. They are not going to be bullied by Chinese behavior. And in fact, slowly it is coming up. In fact, again, going back to even Obama period, it was the only country which was ready to play the pivot to Asia kind of politics of United States. It was ready to get American troops, American forces in its bases. So it has, so I think completely we should not be surprised by its behavior.
But you know, today, Doctor, there was an article in the Economic Times that spoke about, again, or alleged a Chinese deception with a complete timeline, wherein they had stopped domestic travel in their own country, within their own country, but were pushing for international travel and were encouraging international travel, and actually held back the WHO from issuing an advisory, which the WHO then termed as divergent views on the issue, rather than really saying that they were being puppeteered, which is what most people and critics are alleging. And continued with the international travel, which you know has the spread of the pandemic and with the ferocity has been attributed to that. So how is China going to counter these kind of timelines and case studies really that are coming forward?
Actually, you know, China and Pakistan both are synonymous with the word deception, which you rightly pointed out. And they have been doing it in several spheres, not only now this is the problem of pandemic, the health issue, but even in security, even in economics, everywhere they have been doing it. And they have not stopped it even now. So what they are doing it, as you write, they suppressed the statistics. They first suppressed about the information of the disease, because of which the world faced the problem. And now, as you said, they spread the disease, spread the virus by international traveling. Even there are reports in New York Times how one delegation went to Italy, interacted with the mayor there. There was a huge, big celebration. And after that celebration, Italians have started getting positive reports about this problem. Means for the reports, the medical reports have started becoming positive. So they suppressed it not only in Italy, but also in other parts of the world. They traveled. Only America, Trump, despite with all his madness, you can say, with all his eccentricities, started raising question. And it started raising question about somehow stopping Chinese from coming to United States. So if you travel, had you traveled to US in, say, in February or March, first question they will ask you, did you travel to China? Are you coming from China? If you are, then you will not go. So at least Trump took some action on that. Yet, because of his other problems, he is facing this kind of problem now.
There's a question, Professor Nalapat, already for you, which is what will be the geopolitical landscape? I'm afraid my line is a bit unstable, so I'll just take off the video. This is from Abhikaran. He wants to know what will be the geopolitical landscape when the world comes out of this pandemic. He recently saw an Economist story on China emerging as the winner. Could you share your thoughts on that?
Well, I'd like to first talk about, Rajiv's comments on Australia. And I'd like to say, yes, there are now two security systems emerging in the world. One is the security system, which is led by the United States. And the other is a security system led by what I would call the Sino-Russian alliance. And Australia from day one has been part of the US-led security system. So I think the Australians would like to push the Quad very far. The Americans would like to push the Quad very far. Japan would like to push the Quad very far. And we have to see how far India would like to push this particular Quad. Because in the Quad, India is the only country that has not taken a decision as to which security alliance it is going to be a member of. And there are only two choices. Either you're part of the Sino-Russian security alliance, or you're part of the alliance which includes America, Japan, and Australia. So India, at least that I'm hearing, I don't see that we have yet taken a decision on that. But the Australians have taken a decision long back. And they are with the Americans historically, and they are with the Americans now. If God forbid there's a superpower conflict between the US and China, there's absolutely no doubt Australia will fight on the side of the United States. I don't think even the Chinese will have any illusions about that. So, second point I'd like to say is, what are our intelligence agencies of the world doing in China? When a country shuts down a body of electricity, shuts down a province, shuts down domestic travel, something is the matter. And you still welcome, coming out of there. At least Prime Minister Modi, by the 3rd of February, he shut down. The first person shut down, if I remember, was Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I think he shut it down the 24th or 25th.
You think he's alive, Professor Nalapat? Sorry to digress, but
Advaita, I can tell you, North Korea is a very difficult, very difficult state to get into. I was told that we had a problem, but then that's a separate topic altogether.
Okay.
All I want to say is that a country that close to China, next door to China, I think on the 24th or 25th of January, if I'm not mistaken, North Korea was the first country to shut its borders to China. Even we followed a week after that. The Americans followed about a week after that. And one of the reasons is the WHO completely failed in warning the world. Now look, people are saying Chinese did this, Chinese did that, Chinese give deception. Yes, they don't make any secret of it. I mean, every year you find analyses of what the Chinese say and what they do and the difference between them. I don't know who thinks that the Chinese, among all the countries in the world, are very upfront about whatever they do. I've not seen too many countries like that, but China is certainly not part of that. The Chinese leaders don't pretend to be saints. They don't pretend to be, anything like that. So the point is, I'm surprised that when the Chinese shut down Wuhan, shut down Hubei, and shut down their domestic flights, the rest of the world did not immediately get the hint and ban flights. If you're talking of Wuhan, for example, Italy, forget Italy, Great Britain, you had flights coming from Wuhan into Great Britain for more than a week or 10 days after the Wuhan shut down. I mean, how crazy is that? They didn't ban travel out. So flights from China were coming in, and poor Boris Johnson, of course, is one of the victims of that. But the reality is, Advaita, I'm really disappointed in the way the agencies failed to warn, and most of all in the WHO. The WHO has been irresponsible. I'm not saying it's been complicit. That's maybe going too far. It's been irresponsible, and it has been extremely, if I may say so, remiss in its responsibility by taking so long to warn the world. In fact, when some countries went and blocked China, if I remember Narendra Modi, the WHO was saying, oh, you don't need a travel ban. There's no problem. And
Yes.
long after it was clear, and the WHO had clear information about people-to-people transmission, and they have field stations in China. Other places, Taiwan, for example, informed them very clearly that there is a people-to-people transmission, and the WHO just sat on it and denied that there was any people-to-people transmission. I'd like to find the scientists in WHO who are behind that, because they have hundreds of thousands of human lives at their hands.
Yeah.
So much of blood and lives have been spilled because of those scientists.
Dr. Nayan, Professor Nalapat brought on the India position on all of this. I find it interesting. The Prime Minister is somebody who follows his own track in many ways. And he has, we've seen at least, post the COVID pandemic, very quickly he got on a conference with, it was G20 leaders, then with the SAARC nations. Then today there was an update that he spoke to Daw Aung San Suu Kyi of Myanmar and was on a conversation with her and, building, because Myanmar, of course, is outside of these kind of combinations, and building, an equation with her and how the two countries will support it. So I think, when Professor Nalapat speaks of these sort of two polarities, which is going to be the American-led and the Chinese-led, is there a separate path for India as well, looking at our geopolitics, our own personal security concerns, the fact that we have been engaged in a war, 1962, long time ago, but the relationship between China and Pakistan is also something of concern. So do you think that we'll find our own path under Prime Minister Modi, or will we have to choose?
You have raised two issues and there was one issue raised before. So I would like to briefly address all these three issues. First, starting with the Prime Minister's approach. I fully agree with Professor Nalapat that our Prime Minister really adopted a very flexible diplomacy, at the same time very tough domestic position on countering and to counter what was sprayed, if possible, is sprayed in the country. So I think he must be congratulated. Even he was a visionary, he immediately shut down the visa system. The airport, he said that no, there should not be any international flight coming to India except those people who are evacuated. There are some emergency. I think we must congratulate Prime Minister for taking very timely action. Plus, he showed his statesmanship in sending medicine or sending other, not only United States, of course, Trump had his own style. He had some aggressive statement about India's region, even as some of the Southeast Asian countries. So should it stand with China, or should it stand with United States, or should it stand separately, chart its own path, which it has been doing so far? Of course, India has to chart its own path, but it should work with the world to somehow expose China, what China is doing and what China has done. And there are many stories, there are many statements that it is not just natural virus which is haunting or troubling the world. It is basically a virus which has come out from the People lab. There is no confirmation, but it is also a line of thinking. And there is much debate, and scientists from all the streams have joined in, from Johns Hopkins, from Rutgers, from Australia, from even a Nobel laureate has raised the question. So I think we should not let it just go so easily. China should be held responsible for that. In fact, it is a signatory of Biological and Toxin Weapons Convention. And Article 6 of this convention demands investigation. So it should put pressure on the world leaders, including great Trump, to ask United Nations Secretary General, which is under international law, to find out about this virus, the origin of virus. It should use forensics and fix the responsibility. If you don't get the responsibility fixed, I think China will get away. So we should not allow China to get away. Plus, there is a provision in this treaty, in this convention, and plus many other regulations, plus many other treaties that you have to share timely information, real time information, which is called, which China did not do it. And because of this, the problem is spread. Of course, the problem is spread because of the irresponsible behavior of many of the European countries, which we had just discussed. So this is sorry, this is another issue. Now I am fast coming to the third issue. Can China replace the United States or the old existing, you can say existing world order? Again, I'll say it's too premature. I think people are in a hurry to predict, and many of them have written because China has recovered early, and after its early recovery, it will be just dominating the world economy. Look, this order was created for several decades, and United States was a dominant power. Then it became a preeminent power. Some talk about unipolar moments. So many things we are talking about. It's not that easy to replace United States dominance. You like it or not, it will continue. And it has done. It has constructed a new category, which we talk very frequently and very casually we can talk, a Western category. These countries, some of these Western powers, especially European countries, may be in a need to have investment to revive their economy, but they just cannot simply overlook their security imperatives, their security demands, and they will not walk away from United States and embrace China, which is known for its irresponsible behavior, which has tormented them. So this is one part. Plus, the world has to grow healthy together. China cannot become healthy and the world remain unhealthy and it will have its healthy economy. It is impossible. I am just giving you two examples. One example, it sent some of the orders were dispatched to European countries, and there was no one to receive those consignments at European ports. So finally, some of the orders were cancelled, and some of them were just languishing. And China had to pay a higher price to somehow manage them in warehouses. And so later they said, "Oh, what has it happened?" So they are just like, so we are not getting any profit. So many just talked about that. Okay, so it will be an early starter and it will just grab the benefit. But that was simply just squashed. Second was service sector growth. Many gave the data that 52.3% early recovery, and through its early recovery, it will just dominate the service sector of the world. What happened? It is not getting any demand. Its supply side it's corrected, its supply side it is strengthened, but now it is realizing there is no demand side. So if it thinks that the world will be sick and it will be thriving, it is impossible. There are, in fact, United States under President Trump had a very proactive trade war in 2015. And what it did, in first half of the 2019 to 2019, it just took away about $25 billion of business from Chinese supply side companies. And where did this business go? This business went to Europe, to Asian countries, to Latin America. Somehow we could not capitalize. So once we are talking about how India should chip in, so I think India may take advantage of the new situation which will emerge, definitely emerge. China will be questioned. China will be scrutinized. So there is no doubt about that. So then we have to develop our capacity and we have to develop our infrastructure. And because many of the countries which were promoted by United States to just get the benefit of the trade war could not do it. In fact, many of the platforms, high-tech platforms, which we are nowadays talking about, that China is really getting ahead in high-tech, in emerging technology. In fact, United States played a very smart role and denied the enabling technology to China, so that many of their projects languished. So this is the situation emerging. So we should not just think that, yeah, China is really going to dominate the world order, economic order. Yes, of course, it was somehow strengthened by its
Okay, so
economic power in recent years. Yeah, you were saying something.
yes, we've got a lot of questions coming in, so keep our answers a little shorter. In that sense, we'll be able to take more questions at this point. There is one for Professor Nalapat. Can you hear me, Professor?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. There was the Ramesh is asking that recently there was a new step by China on introducing digital economy and dumping the US dollar. Professor Nalapat, what is your reaction to this new order?
Well, I agree with Rajiv. It's not going to be easy to win. In the US-USSR battle, you'll remember the battle began around 1946, and it's only in 1992 that the USSR folded up. So obviously this new Cold War between China and the US is going to take some time to play out, and it's not going to be an easy victory on either side. I just want to make a point that in India, we have had a policy of being really good global citizens. The UN, we accepted a UN ceasefire when 1/3 of Kashmir was still not fully under control by our troops. In fact, not controlled at all. And we have accepted multiple so-called international judgments, which have entailed the giving of territory to different countries, the giving of water, and the giving of other rights. Whenever a judgment came against us, we said, okay, we are good citizens, we'll agree. Even if we lose, we'll agree. The Chinese have never pretended to be that, good citizens or whatever. They are very clear, that they have a clear policy. Let's say you take a decision. If that decision is pro-China, excellent, we accept that. If that decision is negative, we reject that. It's not that they are at all willing to accept decisions that are negative. Now, I think we have had some talk about the UN doing an inquiry. Guess who's a permanent member of the UN Security Council who can veto such an inquiry? And I don't think it takes very much to know what China is going to do. They're going to veto every single inquiry. So I don't think any of us should hold our breath for any kind of international inquiry. The Chinese will simply not allow it, and they're big enough not to allow it. Now look, the point is security. I'm very clear. I'm very, very clear that India has to go on the US side on security. We have to stand alongside Australia, Japan, United States, and other countries on security.
And with democracies, China, why are we not mentioning the fact that it's a totalitarian regime, which is above scrutiny from its public, its people, as well as the world in the way it operates?
Well, it's also a regime which does an enormous amount of trade, including with India. If I'm not mistaken, I think about $50 to $60 billion of balance of trade is in their favor with India. So it's a regime that's right in the global system. And very frankly, of course, I admire your views on democracy and totalitarianism. Regrettably, in policy formulations, people don't really worry about what kind of a regime it is. They look to whether a regime is hurtful or helpful to their interests. And if it's helpful to their interests, well, they go ahead. You have a lot of regimes in the Middle East. I don't know the last time.
Professor, I can't imagine what could be more hurtful at this time than the fact that you have 200,000 deaths the world over, 3 million infections, and a very dubious record of revelations on this pandemic by the Chinese.
I fully agree with you. I fully agree with you. My only point is they are, unfortunately, or whatever, fortunately for them, too big to call to account by any of the normal channels we are talking of. The WHO can be held to account. Frankly, China is too big to be held to account. I would like to hold the United States, China, any country to account whenever they have made a problem. And certainly this has been very problematic. Certainly at least 6 weeks elapsed before the Chinese really did significant action on this virus. A lot of time elapsed before they told the world about the seriousness of this particular virus. They were, for a long time, they were in denial. But I quite agree with you. But in my case, I'm an individual who looks at what's practical. For example, I would like very much to go around in a Rolls Royce. Unfortunately, I don't have a car. I use, for one of my assignments, I use a Maruti car. I would love a Rolls Royce, but I don't go around, thinking I'm going to get a Rolls Royce. It's not going to happen. So we have a lot of, thought. This should happen, that should happen. The question is, what will happen? And I can tell you what is happening. That is why this question is very interesting about currency. I've been saying for quite some time, and people were not taking it seriously for a long time, China is engaged on a war, a currency war with the United States. They are engaged in pushing to ensure the dollar goes for a reset. Its value falls by 30, 40%. And the digital currency that they're setting up, the vast amounts of gold they're buying, the blockchain technology they're doing, all that is part of that, along with the fact that today, the petrodollar link, which was established in 1971, is dying. I'm not saying it's dead, but it's dying. And you know the reason why? When the petrodollar link was established in 71, the US was the biggest consumer of petroleum. Today is the biggest exporter of petroleum. So the Chinese are working very hard to say, we'll buy your petrol in renminbi or in euro, not in dollars. And that kind of arrangement is now going in which they're avoiding the dollar. So I'm very happy this question was asked. They are certainly of the view that the US dollar being the global, no, just 1 minute. The US dollar being the global reserve currency has been a great force strengthening the US, and the Chinese would like to ensure that pole position of the United States dollar is no longer there.
A follow-up question from Sanat Kumar, who's asking, will the Chinese yuan, RMB, exchange to American dollar get into trouble in the very near future, or the RMB will emerge more powerful than before? Will China allow American and European companies to move out so easily?
Look, I can say that there are a lot of Chinese companies that want to move out because of the economics. Chinese worker is today much more expensive than other workers. It's becoming more and more difficult to find talent in China, especially the fields where they are, as Rajiv correctly said, they're focusing on artificial intelligence, they're focusing on high tech, and frankly, which is the mother lode of high tech? Which is the mother lode of metadata? Indians. And that's why you've got lakhs of Indians working in the high-tech industry in the United States, lakhs of Indian Americans working there, and now increasingly tens of thousands of Indians working in China, many thousands of Indians working in Taiwan. So the reality of the situation is, very frankly, that we have got a lot of these resources. We have the brain power to take advantage of that. Today, the fight between the United States and China is who will master artificial intelligence. The Chinese have got a very big head start on 5G. If they use that 5G and get into different countries, and then through that 5G, they can access the metadata of those countries. And their 5G is now at least 40% cheaper than the competitors. That's the situation. And the quality is probably better. So they want to use that to get into countries, especially India. They're looking at India as a prize because of our metadata. Why do you think, for example, Facebook bought this huge stake at this big amount of money in Jio? Because Jio has got a huge amount of metadata about its users in India. So Indian metadata is a gold mine. And the sad truth is we have given away our metadata for free across the world all these years, just as we have allowed rare earths to be completely leach away across the world for nothing.
Dr. Nayan, there's a question.
I can't hear you. You have to speak
Stand
again.
in all this journey.
You have to repeat.
There's a question. There's a question from DV.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me now, Dr. Nayan?
No, not.
The question is, what
consequences for Pakistan?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, Pakistan will try to reap benefit out of this situation. I don't know how far can it do it, because For there will be problem. Professor Nalpat has pointed out several. It is in China-Pakistan economic corridor. So debt servicing, how is it going to address this debt servicing? All the countries which are trying to get engaged with China through this Belt and Road Initiative
out of this situation. I don't know how far can it do it because it
somehow manage this debt servicing problem, and it is going to be a big problem for China. So China will of course put pressure on
China-Pakistan economic corridor.
So I don't know how far is it going to succeed. It's $100 billion question which we have to see in the future. But again, relating to security or other geopolitical situation, I don't think there is much is going to change. Somehow Pakistan is again playing the same card which it was playing before. Its Islamic fundamentalism, its Islamic terrorism will continue, and China is somehow going to just scold it, but it will also accommodate it somehow. So that is going to happen. About other security entanglement, I think there will be not much change. But when the whole world starts really distancing from China, then Pakistan will have to adopt its own strategy. Is it going to do it? Is it going to get closer to United States? I don't know. We have to watch it. We should not be in a hurry to give any conclusion. But all depends how the world treats China. If the world treats China very well, as it did it before, so things will be as it was before, and it will continue to be so. So I think this is the situation. So Pakistan
it depends on how long the pandemic continues as well. I mean, it's a test of patience for a lot of people, not only from the health side, but even the fact that economies are on a standstill. Job losses are in the offing. They're already happening. Today, Kerala announced that there are 55,000 Keralites in the Middle East who need to come back because they've lost their jobs. And that's really tragic, but it's also the tip of the iceberg. So I think the kind of human cost that we're seeing in terms of fatalities and infections, that's going to start now filtering down to job losses and things of that nature.
No, job losses are, of course, all over the world. The world economy is expected to contract by 3%. This 3% is a big amount, and the world has to manage. The whole world has to manage it. And in fact, Europe, all of us will be under pressure, including Europe. So how Europe is
fatalities
going to play
and infections,
and
that's going to start now filtering down to job losses and things of that nature.
To somehow reinvent, you can say, or refurbish, whatever you like to call it, its economy. But it is a big challenge. United States will have its own path, and there are companies inside the United States which are suggesting President Trump not to confront China, because some of these, especially greenfield companies which have invested in greenfield projects plus data center, just what Professor Nalpat pointed out. In data centers, this is a huge amount, and they will put pressure on even President Trump to maintain status quo. Again, they are huge. I can give you the data: $900 billion of foreign equities in the Chinese companies. So those who are holding these equities will also play a very different kind of role in the world. So all this is going to become a very complex game, and this game is to be played properly. Whether it is United States security establishment or general political system, how they are going to handle with China. For a change, at least President Trump has sensed or has some sense about China, that China is, you have to manage, you have to check China. If you don't check China today, you are going to have a big monster for tomorrow. And I don't know how Chinese American election is going to turn out, because today, if you see the statement, you may have read the statement of President Trump. He said Chinese are trying to defeat him in the election. So it means he is also getting nervous. The man who made the world nervous is also becoming nervous. So this is a very peculiar situation. Sorry, yeah.
Yes, I think what's coming is really something that we can only sort of guess at. But Professor Nalapat, there's a follow-up question to your currency question. Is that will the currency price war help to strengthen the rupee, or is it time to reevaluate the rupee?
Well, I have long held the view that a strong rupee is in India's interest. The point is that, unfortunately, that view is a very unpopular view so far as those managing fiscal and monetary policy in India are concerned, and it's been unpopular for a long time. We are going back to the period of Indira Gandhi, when Indira Gandhi thought that you slash the value of the rupee, and lo and behold, economic nirvana will come. And she listened to people like L.K. Jha, and she went ahead and did that. And thereafter, inflation just took off in India. Frankly, I was hoping that the rupee would come to the level of around 40 or so, which I believe is a level which fundamentals basically accept. But instead of it, it's now 70, 75, 76. Look, we are an importing economy. We are not really an exporting economy as much as we import. And, importing at very high cost. Secondly, a lot of our exports depend on imports for components. So, I mean, this is, which I believe, I don't understand the logic behind fundamental weaker rupee is very good for India. And I'm hearing this said all over the world. And the point is very simple. Our policy for a long time has favored the US dollar, the euro, the yen, RMB, etc., and against the rupee. Now, I'll give you an example of China. Today, the Chinese RMB is more than 10 times the price of the Indian rupee. There was a time when the Taiwanese dollar was way below the Indian rupee. Today, the Taiwanese dollar is more than twice, 2.5 times almost, the value of the Indian rupee. And forget about the dollar value. Calculate what the dollar value was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 15 years ago. And you see it's a steady fall in the value of the rupee. So I only want to say I don't understand the policy, people, because today, if you're a speculator and you are, basically, short selling the rupee, and if I may say so, if you check the Sunday Guardian, I wrote a piece about certain very influential cartel short selling the rupee at that point in time, and some action was taken, and the rupee stabilized to some extent. If you're a short seller of the rupee, you're in real nirvana, because you know very well the Reserve Bank and Finance Ministry will do nothing to strengthen the rupee. They may make some naam ke vaste gestures. They may make a measure for, let us say, for 0.5% or for 2%, and get those headlines, oh, rupee has strengthened. And then they'll go back to their old policy of seeing the rupee fall. So I don't understand this whole thing about a weaker rupee being good for India. It's completely not good for India. It's not good for the economy. Of course, it is good for people. And that section of people are people who have large foreign exchange reserves or illicit foreign exchange reserves. Supposing now people have talked about $1 trillion of illicit foreign exchange held by Indians and their beneficiaries. I mean, if that's anywhere near the truth, these people will be delighted each time the rupee falls by 5% or 6% or 10%. They'll all become richer. The money they have will be worth much more in rupees. So, I mean, I don't understand, frankly, what this policy is. I would like to understand why a weaker rupee is supposed to be better, but I can't understand. Now, so far as technology is concerned, you cannot escape the fact that technology will use.
Technology, the question of the US dollar from Sanat Kumar, he's asking it of you, Professor Nalapat. How will the US respond to China about encashing the dollar bonds it is holding?
Look, I'd like to say very clearly that today, technology and security alliances go together. Today, there is an iron wall is being formed between high tech in the Russian-Chinese bloc and high tech in the American other bloc. We are, of course, on both blocs. We are both in the Russian bloc and in the American bloc. But frankly, we will never be fully accepted by either bloc unless we take a clear position as to which bloc we are. The other bloc will get angry but at least we'll be getting the full benefits of technology from one of the blocks. As I said, I mean, I don't mind repeating, in my view, it's natural that we should choose the United States bloc. In terms of technology also, Indian people have chosen. Millions of Indian people have migrated to the United States, and millions of Indian people are involved in American, in American tech. So our people have already chosen. But as of now, I don't believe any government has chosen, and they're still saying, no, we are, we can use this technology, that technology, American technology. Look, today it is becoming more and more difficult, and you will have to choose your security partner, because your security partner will determine your technology partners. The two technologies are becoming separate. And secondly, as Rajiv has very correctly said, the logistical chains are also separated into Chinese chains and Russo-Chinese chains and American and other chains. And ultimately, I can tell you 3, 4, 5 years later, India will have to choose. And at that point in time, I'm not sure we can get a bargain as now. Today, when so much of the world is so negative on China, if we take a decision today, we can do what Deng Xiaoping did in the 1980s. He took a very firm decision to align with the United States on security. And thereafter, that was the beginning of the Chinese double-digit boom for over a generation. My view is we have a similar opportunity today. How long that will last, I don't know.
So are we heading into another sort of Cold War kind of situation, or how will...
we are in a Cold War, and that's a very good question that he asked me about the dollar. The fact is, the Chinese have systematically been buying gold since Xi Jinping came. Chinese have gone into blockchain. Chinese have gone into digital currency, and they are far ahead on that. And I think Xi Jinping is not doing this because of the rupee. He's doing it to unseat the dollar. What have the Americans done? They've gone and weaponized the dollar. They've gone and threatened, Iran and other countries. They said, we won't allow you to use dollars. We'll freeze your dollars. So what has happened? The dollar has become less attractive. Tomorrow, what happens? The Americans decide that Saudi Arabia, for some reason, you have to have sanctions against Saudi Arabia, and you weaponize those the dollar there. The Saudi dollar deficits will be nowhere. China also. So the reality of the situation is, I don't think the Americans realize we are already in already in a currency war. Trump realizes we are already in a Cold War. I think he's just now come to the realization we are in a currency war, because recently, for the first time, he started talking about a stronger dollar. A stronger dollar is the only weapon against this kind of activity by the other side. But till now, I mean, American administrations have wanted a weaker dollar, and Trump also, to promote US manufacturing. Now he's talking about a stronger dollar. He got it about the Cold War, and now I think he's also got it about the currency war.
About the currency war.
The Chinese, I can tell you, have a very strong head start.
Okay. Dr. Nayan, this will probably be the last question of the stint, and I'll come back to both of you for last comments. Will China ever take cognizance of Indian sentiments around CPEC other than route to port and resources? Why are they still refusing to acknowledge? This has been asked by Murugan.
Look, China is a restless empire. It wants to just spread its wings all over. And it is using all kinds of, techniques and all kinds of tools and mechanisms to increase its influence or dominance, whatever you like to call it. And this is one of the mechanisms. CPEC is one of the mechanisms through which China wants to somehow, you can say, scuttle India's spread or India's influence, or somehow wants to just somehow tie down India from playing an important role in international affairs. This is one. So I don't think on CPEC it is going to give any concession. We have to be assertive on that. So that part should be very much clear. And China is going to face the flag. That is also very clear. And China tried to have some fusion with the current order. It wanted to get first accommodated. First, it got itself integrated. Then it wanted to get accommodated. And then now it wants to dominate the world. It wants to create an alternative institution, new Silk Road to everything. New institutions, And unfortunately, that it's trying to create a new regime, and it tries to create its own rules to rule the world. So all these things it is doing. So now where we are placed. So somehow we are slightly not very proactive to counter China. And one or two incidents or one or two instances we may quote, like Asia-Africa growth corridors or something like that, and having some connectivity with the neighboring countries. But these have not succeeded. So we have to show success stories. Until and unless we show success stories, the world, even Dr. Sakti Sinha is sitting here and his area, Afghanistan. Even with Afghanistan, we have to work together. With many countries, we have to work together. We should not lose our influence in exercising all the leveraging points. So this is what we are doing. China has, touching Professor Nalapat's area, geopolitics. China is trying to have its own Mackinder and its own heartland theory. It tries to trying to have China's main area, industrial area, is its heartland, and it tries to dominate the world. So how we are going to just fail Chinese design, Chinese game, that is very important for the future of the world also.
I've just got Shakti Sinha, who's the director of the Nehru Memorial Museum.
Was. Past term, sir.
Oh, really? Where are you now?
Partly Baroda, partly Delhi.
Okay. So it's an honor to have you listening in this entire hour. And I thought, I just welcome you for your comments before we close.
Thank you. I think it's very enjoyable listening to both Dr. Nalapat and Rajiv Nayan. Very educative, very thought-provoking. Yes, in the long term, China would obviously like to use its own currency. But in the short term, using their own currency as a barter is fine. But if they can't use it internationally, because that will mean opening up their financial sector, which is actually the Achilles heel of the Chinese economy. So even though emotionally they may want to replace the dollar with the renminbi, in the short term that will not happen because they earn in dollars also. But whether the swap arrangement, a barter deal, obviously they'll prefer the renminbi. So just that point, but otherwise I think both of them have given us a very good point of view, a very good perspective on how things are developing.
And Professor Nalapat, last word to you before we close this out.
But I think and I must say, I'm glad Shakti listened. Shakti is one of the best minds that we have. And if I may say so, he has an outstanding record in the bureaucracy, and he's always been known as a person of integrity. And I must say that, I admired him right from the very beginning, including when he used to serve certain prime ministers whom I didn't have as good an opinion of. I'm not going to name anybody, but I must say that Shakti is a wonderful person. I just want to say, Advaita, that I am really delighted he could listen in. He's been generous to us, I think too generous. I just want to say, China and Pakistan, this has spawned so many, when you have an unnatural relationship, it spawns some terrible children, if I may say so. And one of them is the fact that the Americans also seem to be, fondling that child, which is the Taliban in Afghanistan. And my worry is, frankly, very much bigger than what happens to Afghanistan. It's there, Afghanistan's important, but most importantly, if like 1996, you have a Taliban takeover of Kabul in 2020 or 2021, you are going to see the Wahhabi international bounce back in the reckoning. Across the world, the overwhelming majority of Muslims are moderate, they are modern, they are progressive, but they have been overshadowed by the fact that many institutions have been captured by this small, about, I would say, maximum in some country about 15%, usually not more than 2 or 3% of the Wahhabis. About 80 to 90% of institutions have been captured by the money power, the muscle power, and the ruthlessness of the Wahhabis. So now they are coming out. and they are coming out openly. For example, I'll tell you, when Prime Minister Modi very correctly went ahead with this triple talaq thing, I mean, there was, in fact, the overwhelming sentiment in the Muslim community was good. It's high time, because everybody is not just a husband. Everybody is also a father. Everybody is a brother. Everybody, is the son of a mother. So I would really like to say that my worry is this: the Chinese joining hands with the Russians, joining hands with the Americans, and following this Pakistan thing of installing the Taliban in Kabul. And I know the Taliban, once they get into that power sharing thing, they'll take it over in a very short time like a cancer. That is going to have a very bad impact on the global de-radicalization. And may I end by saying, I am not just talking about the Muslim community. Radicalization in one community creates radicalization in another community. Then that creates a chain reaction of radicalization across different communities in the world, whether it's Hindu, whether it's Christian, whether it's Buddhist, and it's not just Muslim. So I can tell you that this installation of Taliban will have very grave consequences on social stability throughout the world. You can imagine the consequence on social stability in any country if radicalization takes off. I'm sure my good friend Rajiv must be researching this, but I'm also sure he's not going to share his researches in public.
I think that's a fascinating intervention that you made. It almost makes you want to extend this discussion, because we have the expert on Afghanistan right here, but I think I won't be forgiven for doing that. And maybe we can savor this for next week, because I have a premonition that the lockdown is going to continue in some form or the other, if not lockdown 3.0. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. In particular, Dr. Shakti Sinha, thank you for being a part of this discussion. I really enjoyed having you listen in quietly and then join us towards the end. And I do look forward to welcoming you on the Power Panel very soon to discuss exactly what Professor Nalapat has been talking about. And, three people, because these are areas that pay attention to and hear from the best on these matters.
Thank you,
Dr. and Professor Nalapat. Thank you, everybody here. I'll be back on Saturday with another topic, and then, of course, next week again. I'm very tempted. Maybe I'll ask you right now to pick up on this restoring the Taliban and the impact it will have on global terror. I think that's a fascinating discussion to have. And thank you again, and thank you for taking the questions from our viewers who listened in. Thank you, and goodbye. Thanks so much. Goodbye.